4 days ago, my world shattered when my husband discovered my betrayal. Since then, he's left, blocked me on every platform, and hasn't communicated with me in any way. I'm lost, consumed by shame, and struggling to process the full weight of what I've done. I never expected him to forgive me, but what's haunting me most is how easily he walked away. He's a father, he has responsibilities, and I'm drowning in the aftermath, trying to hold everything together on my own. We've been married for 8 years, and for the majority of that time, I truly believed we had a strong partnership. But 2 years ago, cracks started to appear. My husband became overwhelmed at work, and when his mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and had to be placed in an assisted living facility, he withdrew even more. His coping mechanism was to shut down emotionally. He'd bury himself in work or retreat to a corner of our home, lost in his thoughts. When I tried to talk about his lack of involvement and how disconnected we had become, he'd assure me that he was doing the best he could, but his actions said otherwise. It felt like we were no longer a team, just coexisting like roommates, and over time I, too, started pulling away. Then I met someone. I'll call him. He was part of a local parent volunteer group, and we worked together on several events. He was attentive, engaged, and made me feel heard in ways I hadn't felt in years. He laughed at my jokes, complimented my ideas, and made me feel special again. Slowly we began texting. At first it was about upcoming events or just funny memes we shared. But gradually, the conversations grew more personal. He started asking how I was feeling, if I was truly happy. I began confiding in him about my frustrations at home, and he became a source of comfort, a shoulder to lean on. I should have stopped there. I should have recognized the warning signs. But instead, I justified it by telling myself that I just needed emotional support, something I wasn't getting at home. I began hiding my conversations from my husband, a sign that I was already crossing a dangerous line. The first time A and I met alone, it wasn't planned. At least, that's what I told myself. We just finished a meeting at a cafe, and everyone else had left. We stayed behind to talk, and before I knew it, hours had passed. He told me he couldn't stop thinking about me, and when he leaned in to kiss me, I didn't pull away. That kiss was electrifying, a mix of exhilaration and guilt. Instead of walking away, I convinced myself it was just a mistake, a temporary escape. I blamed my unhappiness in my marriage, telling myself that I deserved this. Over the following months, A and I met regularly, and the affair quickly became physical. I lied to my husband about where I was and who I was with, sneaking around during the day when the kids were at school or making up excuses to leave on weekends. I neglected my family, emotionally and physically, all to feed a selfish desire to be desired. I was intoxicated by the attention, the fantasy of being wanted by someone who saw me, really saw me, in a way that felt so far removed from the reality of my marriage. The illusion started to crack when I began making demands. He wanted more. He wanted me to leave my husband and be with him fully. He pushed me to introduce him to my children, which terrified me. That's when I realized how far this had spiraled out of control. The final blow came when he sent me a picture of us together, a selfie taken in my bed, a snapshot of the life I had been hiding. He threatened to show it to my husband unless I made a choice soon. That's when I ended things with A, blocking him on every platform and trying to pretend it hadn't happened. But the truth has a way of coming out, and 4 days ago my husband found out. I don't know how, whether he discovered the messages or someone told him, but he confronted me. I couldn't lie any longer. I confessed to the affair, bracing myself for his anger. But he didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just stared at me, completely devoid of emotion, the same empty look he'd had when he visited his mother. He left that night, and I haven't heard from him since. I've tried reaching out, but he's blocked me on everything. I don't know where he's staying, whether he's with family or friends, and the uncertainty terrifies me. I can't stop replaying everything in my head. Every lie, every moment I could have stopped but didn't, every way I betrayed the man I love, the father of my children. I destroyed our family for something that, in the end, was utterly meaningless. What was I thinking? Was I really going to run away with leave behind my children, my stable, loving husband, and move in with him and his roommates? The reality of it all hits me now. I took advantage of my husband's trust. I chose my selfish desires over my family, and I failed. I now see that I didn't just betray my husband. I failed as a wife, as a mother, as a person. I can't undo the damage I've caused, but I want to take responsibility and begin to repair what I've broken, even if he never comes back. I've started looking for a therapist to work through my issues, to understand why I allowed myself to go down this path. I'm committed to becoming a better person, for my children, for myself, and for anyone who might still have faith in me. When I made my last post, I was still reeling from the aftermath of D-Day, uncertain if my husband would ever speak to me again. 4 days later he showed up, but not alone. He arrived with his father, and as soon as I saw them, I knew this wasn't a reconciliation. It was serious business. Neither of them was angry, but they were calm, collected, and completely serious. My husband, the quiet, gentle man I once leaned on, now seemed like someone else entirely. They sat me down at the dining table, and without much preamble, my husband handed me a piece of paper. I thought, perhaps foolishly, that it might be a list of conditions for reconciliation, a hope that we could rebuild. But as I read the paper, my heart sank. These were not conditions for healing our marriage. These were terms for our divorce. The first item on the list was a paternity test for both of our children. I was stunned. He calmly told me, "I need to be sure." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I understand why he's asking for it, but the reality of hearing him question the paternity of our children, even though I know they're both his, made me panic. I tried to protest, but he stopped me, saying that after what I'd done, I no longer had the right to question his demands. Next came the demand for an uncontested divorce. No fighting, no dragging this out in court. He made it clear that he was done with the marriage and wasn't interested in leaving any room for reconciliation. "I won't spend the next year arguing with you in court," he said. He told me I'd have to accept whatever terms he set for the divorce. There was no room for discussion, no space for negotiation. The third point laid out his financial terms. He stated that I would receive a lump sum payment, an amount he had already decided upon, and that would be it. No alimony, no claim to the house, no further support. He had already spoken with his lawyer, and he told me this was more than fair given the circumstances. While he didn't elaborate on what he meant by the circumstances, I knew it referred to my betrayal, my affair, and the irreparable damage I had done to our marriage and our family. I felt completely blindsided. I knew there would be consequences for my actions, but seeing them written out, hearing him speak so calmly about ending everything we had built together, was unbearable. I wanted to beg him to reconsider, to ask for a chance to rebuild, but I knew that wasn't the time. I couldn't give his father the satisfaction of seeing me grovel, and I knew that his father, who had never liked me, wouldn't have the empathy or understanding I was hoping for. When I asked if we could at least talk about the terms, especially the financial ones, and if I could have more time to process, my husband just shook his head. "You've had time," he said. "Now it's my turn to take control." His father, silent through most of the conversation, was like a shadow in the room. His presence both intimidating and unyielding. At one point I tried to look to him for some support, some understanding, but he turned away. His indifference was painful. When I asked if there was any possibility of adjusting the terms, or if I could have more time to consider everything, my husband didn't budge. "This isn't a negotiation," he said firmly. "If you don't agree, we'll let the courts handle it. But I promise you won't get a better deal." His tone was cold and certain, as though he had already made up his mind and wasn't willing to reconsider. I felt utterly powerless. Every demand he made was a direct response to the betrayal I had caused. The paternity test request shattered me, but I understand why he wants it. I've lied so much that he can't trust a word I say anymore. As for the financial terms, they're harsh, but I know they're justified. I don't deserve anything more after what I've done. I told him I needed a few days to review everything, but the truth is, I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to fight for the marriage, but I know that's not what he wants. And perhaps it's not even what I deserve. I'm terrified of the paternity tests. What if the children find out? Even though I know they're his, the emotional toll it could take on them scares me to death. I'm also scared of the financial reality of losing the house and not receiving alimony. I haven't worked in 7 years, and the thought of going back to work fills me with dread. Most of all, I'm terrified of the permanence of all of this. No matter what I do, no matter what I say, I feel like I've lost him forever. I don't know how to face the paternity testing with the children, or if I should accept his terms outright or try to ask for more time. How do I rebuild my life after all of this? I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, but if I accept his terms, I'll be left with nothing. I feel like I'm in a hole with no way out.